Hi there, my name is Grace Fitzgerald, and today I'm going to be doing a quick explanation of brain development in utero. I'll be doing this by going through significant week increments and discussing the major parts of brain development in these increments. So in the first 4 weeks, neural tissue begins to form, which is known as the neural plates. These then fold into the neural fold, which then develops into the neural tube. The neural tube will then differentiate into the forebrain, the midbrain, the hindbrain, and the spinal cord. The forebrain is a very significant part of the brain, which then develops into the cerebral cortex. The cerebral cortex is super important, which I will talk about a little later, and does a lot of its development in these first 4 weeks. The midbrain will develop into a neural relay, which sends information from the body to different sites of the brain. The hindbrain controls the most basic physiological processes such as breathing, heart rate, all of the most important things that keep us alive. The spinal cord becomes a pathway for conveying information between the brain and the rest of our body. During weeks 4 to 8, a lot of rapid growth is happening. The face becomes recognizably human at this point, which is arguably the most significant details that parents look for in uterine ultrasounds, so this is a super important aspect of uterine development. This is when the eyes will migrate forward and the two hemispheres of the cerebral cortex emerge. In weeks 8 to 26, the amount of brain tissue is increasing rapidly. This is when neurogenesis begins to happen, which is new formation of cells, and this allows the brain to grow by adding layers to itself as these cells develop. This will continue into a newborn's first year. And then at this point, the cerebral cortex will also grow to cover the midbrain. In weeks 28 to 40, a major structural change begins. The cortex expands greatly in surface area and begins to wrinkle in the skull. The gyri and the sulci form in the brain at this point, and these are those cerebral folds that help create a quick neural network that allow the brain to become an established control center for the whole body. So the most important thing I talked about in this development was the cerebral cortex. That comes from the forebrain, which I talked about in weeks 0 to 4. The cerebral cortex is that wrinkled part of the brain that we all kind of think about when we picture the brain. It regulates so many of our human functions and makes us who we are. It develops our personality, so many different human functions, and the most important development of the cerebral cortex happens within these first couple weeks, which is something that I found very interesting in this lesson, was how soon the center of our personality develops. I thought that spoke pretty loudly about fetal development and how rapidly it begins. Another thing I wanted to touch on from this lesson was the incredible scientific discoveries that we're making and the ability that scientists now have to quantify this brain maturation in utero. There's these new developments that allow for an insanely in-depth look at the fetal brain and maturation, and with our faster MRI techniques that are capable of actually freezing motion of the fetal head during the acquisition of a slice. And then these have been combined with advanced post-processing algorithms that build 3D images from motion-scattered slices. This has motivated the development of techniques to automatically label developing tissue zones within MRI data, allowing their quantification in 3D and 4D within the normally growing fetal brain. This was, I think, the most interesting thing that I took away from this week's lesson.